Hey, it's Mirna from Happiness Academy. Welcome to the Happiness Academy podcast, a place where you can discover practical, simple, yet effective tools from the science of positive psychology. You're at the right place if you're looking to live a life of well-being and joy, staying resilient when facing any challenges, and incorporating a sense of meaning in things you do. Ready? Let's dive in. In my TEDx talk a while back, I talked about how to live life that's more fulfilled and how to achieve that by living it a little bit more intentionally. And there I spoke about three elements that are the skeleton, the core of intentionality. I call them the three P's. So it was proactivity, perspective, and priorities. In other words, to be intentional and live fulfilled life, we need to be proactive, we need to expand our perspectives, and we need to protect our priorities. Now, I'm lucky that this podcast allows me to dive deeper into each of these and to share with you more practical tools and talk about how specifically can we put each of these three P's into more practice. In the previous episode number 24, I explored the proactivity aspect of it. I will link it in the description of this episode as well, if that one is interesting topic for you too. Today, I am diving into the second one, into expanding perspective. Complex topic, I must say. So perspective in this context, it's really about two different things. On one side, it's about how can we develop and strengthen our ability to see the world or the situation from new angles. Let me say that again. How can we develop and strengthen this ability to see the world or the situation in which we are in from different and new angles? But then there is also a second aspect of expanding perspective, and that is how can we get better with putting things in perspective, which means creating clarity, zooming out to see the bigger picture, putting things in perspective of our life, of our priorities, and so on. Now let me dive a little bit deeper into the difference between the two. Perspective, I can say, is that moment when I see clearly all the choices and options that are ahead of me, even the non-obvious ones. And for that, first I need to have an open and creative view of the situation, right? I need to be able to explore all the different angles, discover new different ways of seeing and approaching this situation. We could call this part creativity. And a bit later in this episode, I'll also share how can we work on that more actively and in practice. But then the second step is also so important and so needed. And that second step is to put things in perspective. So in a way, you could say it's having perspective over perspective. No. In other words, understanding within this whole big range of options, within all the possibilities, what is actually important, what is actually relevant. How can I maybe compare these different perspectives that I see and different options? How are they connected between each other? And what is actually fitting me the best in this situation? What is most important for me? So getting that, putting it in perspective of our life. Let me give you a couple of examples on that. Let's say that I'm talking about life design, about my own life design. In the first part, in the creativity part, I will need to open up my perspective. And that means I will need to be open and creative to imagine all possible scenarios and options of how I could live my life. Even the crazy ones. Because first of all, crazy doesn't mean impossible. And second, by going far and going crazy, I will actually find also creative, realistic options. Maybe, I don't know, I want to be a cowboy, cowgirl, whatever. Maybe I want to be, move to Mozambique and be a marine biologist. Or maybe I want to write a book and have it bestseller and everybody will read it. Or maybe I want to live as a digital nomad. Doesn't sound like a very crazy today, but 12 years ago when I started playing with that, it was pretty crazy one. And now, first, I need to imagine all these possibilities. First, I need to be creative to go crazy, to go into the impossible. But then, only in the second step, I need to put these ideas into perspective of my life and my possibilities. First of all, I should recognize that actually, yes, I can do almost any of these. I can do much more than at first I imagine. I have many more, options in my life. If I actually really care about something and dedicate my life to it, I can really do a lot of things, even the ones that at first might seem impossible. But then I also need to recognize that each of these comes with a cost. Each of these comes with a big price. And right now, when I'm putting it into perspective, I'm choosing which price am I ready to pay for some of these options. So I'm choosing options from all the creative options that I actually want to implement in my life and make a part of my life design. But I'm also building awareness of what does that mean? What do I need to invest? What do I need to do? And what price do I need to pay to make this reality? So with this, I'm putting these crazy ideas that I developed with my creative perspective, I'm putting them into the perspective of reality, into the perspective of my own life. Now, let me throw one more, maybe simpler example, and then I'll talk also about developing both of these a little bit more. So example could be also, let's say I'm invited to invent an event to speak. Easier, more straightforward example, could happen to any of us. Hey, you got an invitation to be a speaker on a conference. Now, what would it mean to put this invitation into perspective? To not put that invitation in perspective would mean to just focus on, do I want to say yes or no and why? But to put it in perspective, I would want to step back and think, how does this event and speaking on this event fit with my vision and my life goals? But also, with my plans of the moment, how do I feel about that event? But kind of playing on both levels. Do I feel like doing this? Do I want to do this? Am I motivated to do this? But also, does it actually fit into the bigger perspective of my life? And then if I choose to do it, to put it in perspective and to be intentional, would mean to ask myself, hey, what kind of experience do I actually want out of this event? If I accepted to speak here, how do I want this to go? What do I want to focus on? What do I want to create out of this experience? Not just what do I want to talk about? And, I want to do it well. Okay. No, what do I want out of that really? So first of all, I need to be proactive to even ask these questions. Most of people will simply focus on saying yes or no and thinking, what should I do or what do I want to do? But not necessarily how does it fit in my life. And then even when I'm proactive, I still need to be creative enough to think of all the potential options of what experience I might build by joining this event. Do I want to focus on my talk and doing it really well? Is that a meaningful challenge for me? Or do I want to focus on connecting with people and having many conversations on that event? Do I want to use my talk or attendance of event as an opportunity to actually connect and talk or, network? Or do I maybe want to be focused on hearing questions from audience on this topic? So I would get feedback on what are their current challenges and what's most interesting for them. Or maybe I want to be focused on using this opportunity to be invited to speak on more conferences. The point is, these are completely different goals, but there is no right one. But I do want to be intentional in which one I choose. Have a goal in mind and know how I want to use my time on this event. But to be intentional, to know how I use my time, first, I need to be proactive and I need to be creative and open-minded to see that I actually have many, many choices of how I approach this experience instead of approaching it in, default choice. So let's talk. I hope these two examples were helpful. I hope they were not too vague, but even if they were vague, let me know. Let me know if you need more examples or different examples. Don't be shy to comment in any of the locations where you found this podcast or on YouTube, or by replying to the newsletter in which I shared this episode. Now, let's talk a little bit about the first part of perspective, about being more creative and more open-minded, and let's flip it into practical. Here are 5 tips how I can nourish my creativity and my ability to be open-minded. 5 quick practical tips. First one, talk to others more, explore their point of view, especially to others who think quite differently than me, people who have different background, different life story, different personality, different experience in any way. Talk to them, explore their perspectives on different situations. It will give you different new points of view. Second thing I can do to explore creating multiple perspectives, and all these 5 strategies you can use in general to build more creative and open mindset, or you can use it in a specific situation when you would like to have more open ideas, to get more perspectives and more ideas. So the second one is to put myself mentally in the shoes of others. And this is, first of all, not the same as talking to others, right? It's very different, because when you talk to them, they will give you an opinion that maybe you couldn't even imagine. And when you imagine, it will be a new idea that's kind of a merge of your perspective and their perspective, and it's kind of a whole third thing. And if you want to go silly and creative with this, you can also imagine putting yourself in the shoes of kids, babies, dogs, aliens, whatever, dinosaurs, sharks, you choose your flavor, but asking yourself, what would this particular creature think about this situation? What could their intention be, or their agenda in this, or their view of this situation? Nourishing this kind of ability to see the world through eyes of others, of somebody very, very different, not just in conversation with them, but also mentally putting ourselves in their shoes, really nourishes the creativity, really nourishes that aspect of getting more ideas. Okay, idea number 3 to be more creative, to nourish creativity, is to often stop to generate more options before making a decision. Quite related to the whole idea of intentionality, it's just this one, to try to act a bit less on autopilot and to jump into the situations by default and immediately, and to just a little bit more practice those mindful pauses before any reaction or before any action or before any decision, where we stop, take a nice deep breath in and out, and just think, what are my options here before doing something, before deciding something. And in that, trying to be a bit creative, maybe even a bit silly, to think a bit more open-mindedly. Now, idea number 4 of how to think more creatively is to practice developing creative ideas. And you can do that with many books that talk about creativity. There are many, many cool ones out there. Let me know if you need a list. No, don't be shy. And also many exercises on creativities. You can find these online, you can find them in the books. For example, De Bono has many exercises of a kind. But then also learning different methodologies to think more creatively. Just examples of some. If you learn creative writing, if you practice creative writing, that will definitely give you more creativity. If you engage in debate or in constructive conversations, or maybe if you learn methodologies like design thinking or appreciative inquiry, or maybe if you engage in any creative hobbies. No need to make it super complicated. The point is to expose ourselves to some new activities, new mental activities that are aligned with being more creative, with practicing creativity. So it might be a good time to pause this podcast episode and to ask yourself, hey, what could I be trying out these days? How could I be practicing more creativity a bit more? And I will go with idea number 5 on how to build more creativity. And that is to simply expose yourself to as many as possible, new contexts and new ideas by reading articles that are not the standard, portals or newspapers where you read articles. Reading newsletters that are a little bit different from different people. Reading books, again, searching for something that's a bit different than what you always take. Not just your favorite authors and genre, but also exploring something new. Asking others for recommendations of interesting book. Looking for something where an author is a bit original and thinks a bit more creatively and in different directions. But then also watching documentaries or movies, but looking for creative, for good ones, for different ones, for the ones with unique perspective. And looking for things that are in area that are out of our most narrow interest, that are out of our habitual content we engage with. And then definitely travel and exploring new hobbies, new events, new conferences, new meetups, new conversations, but definitely travel is one of the best ways of building in new perspectives and thinking more creatively. Because bigger diversity of memories in our brain actually then gives us more, just more ideas we can fall back on, more ideas to inspire us. Basically, all these 5 ideas and being creative is all about giving brain a range of different examples. That it can process in the background and that it can pull out when you will need a new idea. Just filling it up with many examples of perspectives how things can work. Now, about the second one, I hope you're still with me. I really packed a lot of thoughts into this one, so feel free to also pause a bit, take a couple of deep breaths. At least with podcasts, that's easy. You can continue when you feel like. Now, about the second one. The second one was choosing the right intention for me, right? Within the range of options that I created. So basically, it was putting things into perspective of my own life, having perspective over perspective, in a way, building clarity. That one starts with the question, what matters most to me, in this situation or in this experience. And it's connected to asking, what do I want from life? And it's also connected to asking, what do I want from this specific moment today? It's kind of the core of intentionality to ask, what do I actually want out of this? And what is most important to me right now? What is most important to me right now or today or in this specific situation? What is most important to me in my career, for my happiness, for my relationships? In the next podcast episode, I'll talk more about protecting those priorities. But before we can protect them, we need to build perspective of what those are, what matters to me, what is important to me. And to develop this ability to intentionally, put things in perspective and see the bigger picture when we want to, zoom out from being immersed and lost in action of the situation. It means 2 things. It means developing 2 strong mental habits. The first habit is to create space for deep, meaningful reflection. Create that space fairly regularly. It doesn't have to be every day, but like every month, every couple of months, or at least every year. And that can be like year-end reflection, or it can be reflection like the one we do on Life Design Workshop, where we reflect, on our whole life vision, life plan, what matters to us in a nice, structured way, and kind of put it all in a structure and in a perspective. So it's a reflection in which we give ourselves space and inspiration and deep questions to see the very big picture of what life is, our life is, and where do we want to take it. So that's one habit, deep reflection fairly regularly. And then the second mental habit we need to be able to put things in perspective easily is this habit of keeping awareness. So habit of asking often, how about right now? What do I feel right now? What do I need right now? What do I want right now? It's something we also practice in the exercise we call self-check-in, which we do on most of Happiness Academy courses, workshops. Probably you might have also seen a video. If you Google Happiness Academy self-check-in, or if you search for it on YouTube, you will find it. I'll also link it in the description of this episode. But the idea is creating these moments when I ask, how am I doing? What do I need? And to ask that question on many levels. And what is my intention? And what do I choose right now? Now, this is a habit that is difficult to build. It's a habit we train a lot on Happiness Academy in different environments, like on My Remarkable Year, which is a year-long program where we have one monthly call every month for 2 hours. We sit down, we reflect, you refocus on your goals, you get some clarity and motivation. And we always practice mindfulness related exercises like this, where we keep asking, what actually matters to me? What do I actually want? What is actually priority? Are the right priorities in place? But it's also something we work with on all the other courses, because it's in the core of life well lived. So if we talk about mindset, we'll definitely work with this, putting things in perspective. If we talk about resilience, we'll talk about putting things in perspective. So more or less on every Happiness Academy course, this topic will show up and we will practice it actively. On Getaways, which is our version of kind of learning events similar to retreats, on my topic of mindfulness, always coming back to that. And one of the best ways you can practice this is actually also mindfulness exercises and meditation. Why? Because meditation allows you to create more awareness and more space in your mind between stimuli and between your reaction. It just allows you that breath, deep breath, the moment, a second, a quarter second, we say usually, of pause before you react on something. So you can put it in perspective first. So you can react more consciously and more awarely. So anything where you can step away from being hijacked by emotion in the moment to a place that's more grounded, that's more spacious level of thinking, that's more open, that's more, less lost and confused and more kind of grounded. Anything you do that gives you that will help you put things more in perspective. And meditation and breathing exercise is very helpful here, but also are many mental habits, such as the ones we learn on different courses on mindset, resilience, and so on. But so is sport for some people, conversations with some of our close friends for other people, connections with others, time alone, journaling, many, many ways. But the thing is, we want to build more of these moments. We want to build more of opportunities to put things in perspective more. Now, I covered a lot today. It was like very packed 20 minutes jumping between different areas of this topic. So let me summarize it just a little bit to bring it all together for you. But please don't be also shy to reach out and let me know if some part needs clarifying or adding more examples or more exercises. I'll be happy to clarify that. The best way to reach me is always through Happiness Academy newsletter, which I'm sending every Thursday with valuable ideas, with insights and tools. And it comes from my email address, which means you can always reply to it and share any thoughts on any of the podcast episodes or anything else, and ask for more. Give me ideas of what would you want to listen to. Let me know what are the challenges you're meeting these days. Now, but I will still also summarize it a bit, and also you can always listen to this episode again. Now, expanding perspective has two big areas. On one side, being creative in seeing new angles, new ideas. And on the other side, also putting things in perspective of our own life and priorities. And both are equally important. One doesn't work without the other. Creativity without putting it into perspective will make us messy and, unfocused. And just putting it in perspective, if we're not very creative, will still keep us always in the same habits and will not give us a lot of freedom. So we want to nourish both. They're both equally important. And both of them, we need to practice on two levels. On big picture of our life, where we want to be creative and open-minded, but then also putting it into a structure, like again what we do on Live Design Workshop, creating that first starting with very open and creative, crazy thinking, what do I want from life, but then going into very structure, what is actually my intention, what is actually my life about, putting it in perspective. And then the second level on which we want to practice it is the level of everyday moments. And again, for both, always questioning, what are my options in these situations? What is the best option for me? Which option do I choose intentionally, not by autopilot or a habit? I hope you will play with these perspectives. I hope you will use this podcast as source of ideas, but also a bit of motivation to step away from autopilot and to step into a little bit more intentional perspective. I hope you will also let me know your thoughts on this episode. Again, the best way to do that is through Happiness Academy newsletter. I will also link it here in the podcast. If you're not on the newsletter yet and you love learning these tools and ideas, do join us there. It comes every Thursday. But you can also comment it on any other platform or on Happiness Academy Instagram. I'll always be happy to hear your thoughts. Now, I'm looking forward to talk to you about protecting priorities, part number 3. It's going to come in episode number 27, because between these two, I want to squeeze in a little episode on mindfulness during holidays, as it's kind of holiday season. But I hope, you're going to be patient for a couple of weeks and then check that episode on protecting priorities. In the meantime, I would be curious to hear your questions. Do stay in touch. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for exploring this topic with me. I hope you found some exciting ideas and tools that you will use already today. Remember, they only work if you put them in practice. But then they make all the difference. If you like Happiness Academy podcast, do leave us a rating and a review. It will be really helpful. And if you haven't done it yet, click on the links in the episode description to discover free materials and valuable resources to dive in deeper. See you in the next episode or at the Happiness Academy newsletter.